Hi everyone, can you hear me okay? Great. Well, we're just excited about the fact that you get CPD points coming to listen to us chat. Hopefully we chat about something that's useful, something that you find helpful, and most importantly, and in a minute I'll introduce the other panelists and our guests who are actually the ones that will give some really powerful stories about sort of driver risk management. So the title today, Driver Risk Management, the Journey from Confusion to Clarity. Hopefully in today's session, we'll answer a few questions for you. Some of the questions are you or the business you work for meeting your duty of care for your workplace drivers? And if the answer to that is no, or you're not sure, then how can you ensure that you are? Okay, and those are some really important questions, because the impact of not being sure is that can be absolutely catastrophic. And we'll probably talk to talk to some examples of that as well. But before we answer these questions and before we go into it, I just want to give you a bit of detail about us, why we're here, why I'm here. So I'm Dave Marsh, as said. I'm the Chief Exec of TTC Group. We're one of the UK's largest training and compliance organisations, specialising particularly in people risk management and supporting organisations to do that, with a real heritage in driving. Definitely not here to sell, because that's not what we're here to do. But I think I just wanted to throw some facts out to give you an idea of the size and scale that we operate at, which hopefully will give a little bit of credibility as to why we're here. So last year we delivered over 630 different training courses that were either delivered through e-learning or sort of face-to-face in cab or through workshops. And the courses range everything from things like speed awareness. Hopefully none of you have been customers on any of our courses there. Drink drive rehabilitation, again, hopefully not. But all the way to things like private hire and taxi driver assessments, health and safety in the construction sector, and also education and clinical supervision courses for those in the healthcare sector, so the NHS and others. And we've got over 700 professional and accredited trainers working for us, delivering approximately last year about 2.2 million hours worth of training to over 740,000 people. So quite big numbers. And the other aspect, which we'll talk about today, is then also about 1 million people use our software platform to help manage the competence and compliance of their drivers and wider employees to ensure that they were competent and compliant to do their jobs. Today, obviously, we're looking specifically at driver risk management, whether that's company car drivers, commercial vehicle drivers, or grey fleet. And what we mean by grey fleet, for those who don't know, those who use their own car for business purposes. And it really doesn't matter whether you've got thousands of drivers or one driver, your duty of care is exactly the same as an employer. And there's some scary stories, as I said earlier, about where people have not delivered on that. The statistics speak for themselves. So last year, 1 in 3 road traffic accidents involved someone who was driving for their work. And that's quite an amazing percentage. 33% of all accidents involve someone driving for work. And I think, therefore, it reinforces the importance of supporting our employees as we do, as they go about their jobs and roles on our behalf. So we're going to explore some of the factors around preventative and reactive risk management that will help to drive positive change, and some examples from our other panelists to help us do that. But also, not just how do we foster more driver engagement, but also how do we get board buy-in, because getting buy-in right from the top is really important. And a lot of organisations will talk to the fact that it's just not important enough to people higher up the organisation, and they're not getting enough traction. So some of the things we'll talk about is how do you achieve that? So today I'm joined by a panel of real professionals who've successfully implemented best practice strategies to reduce incidents, safeguard drivers, and ultimately also protect their business and their business profitability. So I'd like to introduce Miranda Falconbridge, who's the Head of Driver Safety at Talent, Jeremy Hubbard, who is the Senior Motor Consultant, UK Risk Control and Engineering at Aon. Did I get that right? It's a big title. And Gary Rigby, who's Group Head of Fleet Compliance at Kia. And we're going to hear from all of them about their experience and how things have worked for them. So can each of you very briefly just give us, in a sentence, a bit about who you are, what your role entails, and also what your business does. So should we go from the far left? So Jeremy.
Okay, so can you hear me? Yes, all right. So yeah, Jeremy Hubbard. So I work within Aon Global Risk Consulting. What my role is to understand our clients, work with them in terms of suggesting, recommending ways and means to improve that risk, in terms of driving compliance, in controlling costs, but also then presenting that into the insurance market so that we can tell the story. We want to advocate what that company does, your company does, and publicise that so we can drive terms, drive cost.
Great, thank you. Miranda?
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Miranda Falconbridge. I'm Head of Driver Safety for Talent Technology Services. I've been working for the business for 25 years, but in the last 6 years I've been specifically focused on managing road risk. So I'm responsible for developing and designing communication programs and implementing new initiatives across the board. And that is all about reducing road risk, reducing harm on the road, and making sure that drivers are engaged in the activities that we're trying to promote.
Great. And Gary?
Afternoon, everybody. Yeah, Gary Rigby, Head of Fleet Compliance for Kia Group. Been with Kia now about 5 years. As Dave said before, we're about 10 months into our journey with Kia. As probably a lot of you know, Kia is a construction company, maintenance and highways and that. My role is predominantly around fleet compliance. We have a number of operator licenses across the country as well, so we have about 15 transport managers as well that support me with hopefully improving the fleet compliance across the Kia Group at this moment in time. And I'll talk more about the journey that we're on.
Yeah, great. So quite a good breadth there of different organisations with different challenges. So we'll hear from them all. We're going to go straight to Jeremy. So a quick question for you, Jeremy. Sort of as a broker, you're searching a market for the best insurance offerings for your clients. Sometimes that can include financial support in the form of an insurance bursary. Can you just explain to us what a insurance bursary is and who can apply for one and so on?
Yeah, sure. So when we negotiate with insurers, the market of insurers for the best terms and costs deal, one of those elements that we will work with insurers upon is looking at where they can assist in driving risk management, look at that risk profile, improve the risk profile, but also then reduce incidents. So we would be able to negotiate with insurers in terms of what they can offer in terms of financial impetus, if you like. We have delegated authorities so that we're able to influence that and adopt it ourselves by sharing that with them and what we can do without seeking that authority. But you can imagine, on the larger cases, this will drive even more in terms of figures and what we can do to assist then that individual company in terms of financial support.
Great, thanks, Jeremy. So I mean, it's which is great to hear that actually, and we'll get on to actually getting board buy-in, and surely that must be one of the things that helps to get board buy-in, in the fact that the insurers are recognising that these kind of things actually have a real impact on driver safety and improving that behaviours.
Yeah, there's certainly, as in the broker, the insurer, and the client in a tripartite offering, if you like, that we can come together and offer these elements to the insurance market, but also helping them to support and adopt. So
yeah, great. So I mean, so if we move on to actually think about now, how do we create a company-wide sort of safety-first culture in an organisation? Because obviously, lots of organisations have, safety policies and those kind of things. But as we know, driving is one of the most dangerous activities that anyone can undertake every day. And driving for work often involves additional risks, in terms of what those people are doing, where they're trying to get to, and other aspects. But obviously, the health and safety executive explicitly says that employers have a real legal duty of care to any of their employees who drive at work. And obviously, the definition of at work is anything on behalf of your organisation. So irrespective of, obviously, the vehicle's ownership. And there are obviously examples of that. I don't know, people, Amazon were fined $48 million a couple of years ago for an incident, one single incident involving a driver who was not actually employed by them, but actually was working on their behalf, and had an incident and an accident, and they themselves were ended up being fined $48 million. So there's a lot of impact, and that legal duty of care is really important. So, Miranda, can you tell us top line, and then we'll come to you, Gary, what your driver safety challenges are? Both of you are from very different organisations. It'd be great to understand from your point of view, Miranda, what keeps you up at night, and what some of those challenges certainly were and are now.
Yeah, great question. I think some of the challenges, what we try and do is keep the conversation going. So we see driver safety as a shared responsibility. So right from senior management down to line managers and also drivers. And we work very closely with our suppliers and also collaborate with customers directly as well. So some of the key challenges really is just keeping that conversation going. We recognise that driving for work is a key risk. At Talent, we drive about 30 million miles every year. That's across about 1,800 drivers. So we recognise that managing that risk to work locations and also home is something that needs to be carefully considered. So in all health and safety environments, a risk assessment is really important, and it's important to assess the risk of the vehicle, it's important to assess the risk of the drivers, and making sure really that the drivers have got the right mindset behind the wheel. At Talent, we also have a very clear speak-up policy. So if drivers recognise something that they feel is unsafe, they challenge it. There is no blame culture, so we try and operate a just culture across the business, where we try and investigate any near misses. So it's about preventative measures and trying to understand what's happening with any concerns that drivers have got, and addressing those before they become an issue.
Great. No, that's fantastic. Gary, what about from your different industry?
So my background was 18 years with Wincanton and 6 years with ForFarmers. So we were a transport operations business, or businesses at the end of the day. With the Kia is a construction company. We build, we maintain, we repair. So the challenge has been, and we've mentioned it a couple of times here, is the word drivers. And people within the Kia sort of organisation, first and foremost, they're an architect, or they're a fitter, or whatever it might be, surveyor. What we're trying to do I said before, we're on a 10-month journey, and we're still into it, and it's a couple of years in the making it's a couple of years in the making. One of the things we're trying to change is that first and foremost, we're all drivers. And that's the mindset, that's the challenge at the end of the day. I've been there about 5 years now, and it's probably took me about just over 3 odd years just to get it recognised that the first and foremost we're drivers. In order to get to a site, or to go out on the road and maintain the road, or whatever it might be, we've got to put the keys into a vehicle, and we get from A to B, and it's about getting there safely. And I had an opportunity last year I ambushed a presentation which enabled me to identify the risks within Kia, and then from then onwards it was like the pin had been pulled, and now, like I say, we're on this 10-month journey now. What keeps me awake at night? If you'd have asked me that 10 months ago, I'd have probably said a lot of stuff, Dave. Currently at the moment, we're about to start our focus on speeding, and that's through use of the tracker systems within the vehicles.
So that's how you're using telematics to then inform people's risk profile.
Yeah.
And right.
Yeah.
Brilliant. exciting. And we'll hear a bit more about that. And obviously, you've been through a bit of a journey there, and you say you've been there for a while, and it's taken you a bit of time to obviously get, and I know, to get the buy-in from the board, and we'll sort of we'll touch on that. That's really helpful. I mean, Jeremy, from a slightly different viewpoint, you support businesses across a wide range of industries and commercial fleets. You must see things through a different lens. I mean, what are the challenges that your clients are facing in this arena?
Yeah, I don't think the challenges are numerous. It can be grey fleet, it can be electric, it can be regulation, standards that are issued. But I think what we can foresee is that those challenges are the same across most organisations. If I was to go and select a couple in terms of one being data fatigue, I think we all handle far too much maybe amounts of data, and it's obtaining that and trying to make sense of it, and what we then are coupled with is the time and resource that our clients don't have to be able to look at that data and make sense of it then. So there's another element in terms of looking from a data analysis point of view and trying to assist with looking at what insights that's telling us and where we go to target in terms of maybe driver training, maybe there's other elements that we want to bring as a solution. And we've utilised TTC in areas there that we can adopt to improve that risk profile of that organisation. Another element that I will mention is, insurance costs are not softening. We've got claims inflation running at about 8 to 10%, and that's without the geopolitical scenario going on. And there's a few things like that happening around the world at the moment. So our role is to help our clients to understand where their risks are and what we can do then to assist in terms of plugging that gap and helping them then.
And you pick on two things there, and we hear those constantly in terms of challenges, which is time and resources. And people constantly talk about those being stretched. Time and resources are constantly stretched, budgets are stretched, and for many of those, I suppose businesses struggle to keep on top of basic checks at times, and let alone monitoring sort of driver behaviour and training requirements. And I suppose our guests here today know that by taking the burden off management as much as you can in terms of just managing those basics, and how you can utilize technology and automated process and those kind of things to mean things that were quite manual before suddenly become actually much simpler, and insights and data, as Jeremy's talked about, is served up in a way that's very easy for people to utilize and therefore ultimately take action on. And ultimately, that's leading to bottom line benefits as well. But Miranda, I mean, your organisation, as you talked there, has embraced sort of assessing risk on quite a broad level in terms of your drivers. Tell us how you've managed to implement that sort of holistic approach to driver risk management.
So I think in Talent, I think I've already mentioned that it's a shared responsibility, and we try and take a collaborative approach with drivers. So we often develop initiatives which are driver-led. So we take ideas from drivers themselves about what are their concerns on the road, and we often produce personal stories. So personal stories that have either happened to them at work or even outside of work in relation to road risk, and we share those ideas, what are the lessons learned for them, and often personal stories really hit home. So the engagement from drivers is fantastic. When you start to look at the hearts and minds of drivers, you then start to engage. And that is what is causing the change in the driver behaviour. So working with drivers directly is really important, but also working with suppliers across the board. So we work very closely with TTC. We work closely with the driver risk scores that are produced. There's a massive amount of information there. So when drivers come on board with us, they are required to complete the risk assessment. That then gives them a score, and that allows us to get some data insights into where we can help them. So there's tailored training that's provided to individual drivers based on where they're most exposed to risk. And then we also work with the telematics system that we have in place. So that monitors driving and speeding events. So we use Webfleet. Webfleet's a fantastic tool. We've got all the access controls in place. We've got reports that are set up. Line managers can directly access that information. We give clear guidance to drivers on the expected standard of driving behaviour. But then we've also got the right policies and procedures in place that if drivers fall below a certain standard, the line managers intervene. And we encourage the line managers to have a one-to-one discussion. And we share that data with them, and then they agree a set of action plans. And that often then reduces the speeding or even eliminates the speeding, and then reduces that ultimate road risk.
Yeah, very comprehensive. I mean, what's interesting still, I mean, it still amazes me that, you know, we surveyed over sort of a large number of fleet professionals last year, and over 55% of them said that they still rely solely on paper-based checks of people's driving licenses, and obviously there's then a large proportion of people who don't even have fleet professionals, you know, who are then actually not checking driving licenses at all. So you know, Gary, can you know, your organisation has obviously successfully introduced some of these tech-enabled systems and solutions. Can you talk us through why you made that investment and actually the benefit of doing those basic checks and then where it leads on to in your organisation?
Yeah, so as I said earlier on, currently we've got about 11,000 drivers within the TTC Continuum platform. So that's a lot of drivers to check the licence manually with, and the Continuum platform enables us to do that automatically. And going back to what Miranda said there, is that obviously with that initial induction bit, to me that's key with anything to do with driver risk management. If you can get that induction right, and that's what the Continuum system enables us to do, because it's automated, and when we get somebody like a new starter join the company, they'll be getting sent links from TTC, and as part of that onboarding bit, that's the sort of that's their introduction into the way care works, and you know, the way that we want people to sort of join the company. It gives them that first insight in that first and foremost, you know, driver risk management or driver safety is paramount in what we're doing. Great,
yeah, and that sort of does a 40-point sort of check up front in terms of lots of different aspects. I mean, Miranda, how telling do you know, those original assessments through the system, how telling are those in terms of understanding, I suppose, people's aptitude to, you know, to risk, and also, I suppose, where those risk points might be?
So I think when you ask drivers to complete the risk assessments, obviously you're relying upon them to be honest. The questions that are there are obviously based on mileage, age, the types of roads that they travel on, but also I think the range of questions, there are some highway code questions in there, and that often allows us to identify training gaps or knowledge gaps. So we're able to pick up that through the training and awareness. And then there's other risks that the scores then give us, but it allows us to prioritise it. So we look at people that have a certain number of points on their driving licence, mainly speed-related points, and then that allows us to again target specific speeding courses. So there's speeding awareness workshops, and we also offer in-vehicle driving assessments. So that entails going out with the driver for a minimum of an hour. Now, often speeding has a root cause to it. So they either don't understand the speed limit for the road that they're travelling on or the vehicle that they're travelling in. They may be missing speed limit signs because they're potentially travelling too close to the vehicle in front. So there's often other behavioural attitudes behind the wheel that we can pick up as a root cause to why people are speeding. And then as part of that assessment, we're able to understand what their shift patterns are like. You know, are they under pressure? Is there something pressurising them to speed? And given that then temptation in the hope that they're going to save time, you know, all these types of things, you get to the root cause analysis, but it initially comes from the risk profiling. That data that allows us to identify that there's a potential speeding issue here. At the end of the day, we do not want our drivers to get any more points on their licence, because ultimately it will affect their ability to do their job. But first and foremost, we want to keep them safe.
And so it really gives you that sort of tailored approach for each individual, which obviously is really important, because I suppose every as we all know, every individual is very different.
That's right. And also the risk assessments are required to be completed annually. So data changes, so we ensure that everybody completes their risk assessments, redoes the questions. There's a great hazard perception test in there as well. So again, we recalculate that analysis and then continue to look at the most highest risk drivers and support them.
And that, I mean, Gary, to you talked about, I think, 11,000 drivers. That being able to manage something that's actually quite specific for each driver, I mean, must be really important in terms of what you do.
Oh yeah, most definitely, yeah. And I just want to go back to what Miranda said there with regard to that initial risk assessment. Is what we did last year was the actual risk assessment wasn't switched on within the system. So you could have somebody who'd start with care maybe 8, 9, 10 years ago, and nothing else was being done with them. So what we did last year was we actually switched the risk assessment back on for it to be annually. And the other thing that we did on the back of that was the e-learning modules tie in with the risk assessment. So every quarterly they get an e-learning module which is taken from the risk assessment, from that risk profile. But we also turned on as well what we call mini modules. So every month they just get like a short 2 or 3 minute mini module. And the feedback that we're getting, probably just recently, to be honest with you, Dave, probably past 3 or 4 months, is them 2 minute short presentations, it just gets people thinking at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And obviously, like say 10,000 drivers, you can't do that, with
No.
without an automated system.
It comes back to that point Miranda said at the beginning about consistency of approach, keeping it going, the communication, etc.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the obviously high risk sort of areas that we've heard some real horror stories of accidents involving sort of young adults. I mean, Jeremy, we'll come to you first. I mean, from an insurance industry perspective, is there anything, how significant a concern is, our young drivers at businesses, and is there anything specific you guys do to help organisations with that?
I think it is a worry, but I think it's more of the private market than the commercial side. I think from a commercial aspect, businesses will train, will induct, will familiarise youngsters in terms of giving them the experience that they need. So I do think that it's certainly something that I know TTC are able to offer in terms of courses in that respect. But from an insurance point of view, I think it's analysing that risk. Maybe going back to that risk profiling element where even before we employ the driver, we tend to ask those questions and understand where their exposures lie, so we can allocate maybe e-learning, maybe on-the-road driver training, and then refreshing that then. So you're holding the hand of that youngster, that you put them into a van, which has got no rear view mirrors, just 2 wing mirrors, and you're expecting them to be able to manoeuvre that vehicle when they never have done before in the past. So I think it's holding their hand, inducting them, and giving them that familiarisation so they're more confident.
And is that something that, you guys see, Gary, do you put something specific in place to support younger drivers, or is that something you're seeing out of the risk profiling? Yeah.
More so we have a lot of what we call emerging talent within Kia. So every year we'll bring in young employees. And oddly enough, this year is probably the start of where fleet compliance is getting involved. It's to try and sort of get in there before they actually join Kia. One of the things that we did just before Christmas is we actually presented to, I think it was about 240 youngsters, let's call them, within the business. When we look at some of the statistics, is what has been happening as these guys and girls are joining us. And obviously we've got the risk assessment, but we're giving them a set of keys to a brand new car, and we have had a couple of occasions, I'll hold my hands up, where these people have they've caused quite serious damage to the car. So one of the initiatives this year is, as part of that emerging talent, when we do the sort of the road shows, is to get in there before they even join the company. Right. And sort of set the expectation of what we're about and what we can do to help them with regard to risk management.
Miranda, have you?
In talent we have mandatory training, so anybody that has passed their test within the last 12 months, and we identify that through the TTC system, it's mandatory that they complete an in-vehicle driving assessment before they are given access to a company vehicle. So we have quite a strong apprenticeship program. So we put all our apprentices through that in-vehicle assessment. And we also give them familiarisation training. So often they're getting into a brand new vehicle, and that is really just talking them through the safety features of the vehicle that they're expected to drive. We also take that opportunity to carry out a vehicle check with them. So making sure that they're using the CheckSafe app thoroughly and they understand the importance of carrying out that check. And at that point, the in-vehicle assessment takes place, and it's really about making sure that they've got the confidence and the competence to be able to drive one of our company vehicles. And often, if we don't feel that they're up to the standard, if the confidence isn't quite there, we will reassess within 6 months, and they repeat the same process.
And we're talking quite a bit about monitoring and assessment. I mean, did either of you experience, or you're basically like resistance to bringing in some of these things because it felt a bit Big Brother, or it felt, I was talking to someone earlier, who in their organisation quite unionised, and actually, David said we wouldn't be able to bring in that kind of thing. I mean, is that something you've experienced at all in terms of resistance?
Yeah. I'm still experiencing it now, to be honest, and I know I keep saying, but we're 10 months into a journey, and when I listen to yourself, Miranda, I mean, you've probably been doing that where you are now. Is it quite a few years in the making, I would assume?
Yeah, telematics has been in talent for a long time. However, we're just rolling out dash cams, so we're going through that same process again.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. So we are still hearing what we call noise in the business, but we are slowly changing that. And I went back earlier on to, it's changing that behaviour, it's changing that mindset. First and foremost, we're all drivers, but we are getting noise in the business, albeit little noise, but people are starting to come round to it now. I go back to the e-learning, the mini modules, the risk assessment. When we switched everything on, it was like, what's all this coming at us? Now it's starting to become the norm.
And I suppose what's going to be important is also reinforcing those benefits, to them. I mean, fundamentally, it's about getting them home safe, to their families and those kind of things, isn't it? So, I mean, obviously, embedding that sort of culture, that's easier said than done, probably. I mean, Miranda, what do you do to sort of encourage drivers to really embrace the safety behaviours and sort of, where did you start with that?
So every month we develop a brand new campaign. So for the financial year, we set a new driver safety topic. So last year, 2 years ago, we did a Mind Your Speed campaign, which was focused entirely on reducing speed. Last year, we did a defensive driving campaign. So that was focused on reducing the driving events, and we monitored that through telematics. This year, going forward, we're looking at vehicle safety. Every month we develop a brand new topic. It's short, the message is very clear to drivers, and then also what we do is we run driver safety prize draws. So every telematics system that we have in place, if anybody scores a score of 9 out of 10 every month and they have no speeding events, they get entered into a prize draw. And every quarter we run that prize draw, and they have the opportunity to win Love to Shop vouchers. So that acts as an incentive, but also we incentivise drivers, anybody that comes forward with initiatives, people that raise near misses. So we have a health and safety system called TellSafe. So anybody that has any concerns about their vehicle, they raise that through the TellSafe system, and that gets picked up and reported out to the appropriate individual. And that gets investigated. It's
a pretty comprehensive and a lot of communication, but actually the importance of changing up those messages is obviously really...
And I think the prize draws have particularly helped. So
everyone loves winning a prize.
Yeah, and we have run some highway code quizzes as well, because everybody likes a quiz. So usually with the campaign topics, we do 10 simple questions, and often people like to enter those, and we have prize draws on the back of that as well. So it just gets keeps the conversation going and keeps drivers engaged.
And Gary, just quickly, because I know it's sort of still early days, but I mean, have you seen any sort of real positive changes already in sort of what you've done in terms of the attitude towards road safety?
Yeah, most definitely. I'm sort of my inbox is sort of filling up more and more, probably on a daily basis now, where we're getting people, because obviously it's what we've we've got a lot of grey fleet drivers. So one of the things that we've just implemented just before Christmas was the permit to drive. One of the challenges that we had was with the grey fleet drivers was the insurance and the business use insurance, and not having the correct business use insurance. So one of the things that we implemented was if you haven't got a permit to drive, or it's a pending or a revoked permit to drive, then it's due to, most times, with people not getting the correct business insurance or not having business insurance. But more and more now is what I am seeing is people actually picking the phone up or drop me an email saying, oh, I've submitted my insurance certificate, what do I need to do? I'm a little bit worried about that. So, we are starting to see that come through more and more
much
now.
more proactive.
Yeah, and that message is starting to...
And that's managed
filter
through the system.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
I mean, one of our clients, Wilmot Dixon, and you would have seen this, Katie, obviously last year reported over £250,000 saving on their own fault driver claims after having sort of implemented the similar sort of journey that you have a few years before. I mean, Jeremy, you must have significant reductions in sort of claims and incidents or different types of claims sort of when people have started to go on this journey. Can you share some insights sort of on that?
Yeah, certainly. Well, one of the items that we would offer from Aon is a review of our clients' policies, procedure, a review of everything to do with fleet risk management. And what that can do then is highlight where those costs are, understand any compliance issues, and what we can do to help recommend, suggest ways and means to improve that. What we see in terms of a historical claims analysis, an occupational road risk that we would undertake, as well as the management systems analysis, is items in terms of reporting of incidents. So if we can report that claim within that 24 hours, that first day, we've got a better chance, or the insurer certainly has the better chance of intercepting it and preventing those credit hire costings. Fitment of cameras, that Gary and Miranda will probably back me here in terms of if those cameras are capturing roundabout collisions or lane departures, if you like, changing lanes incidents, then the insurer has a better opportunity to defend their liability and the clients themselves. But one of the other items would be low-speed manoeuvring and seeing how many claims are involved in hitting third-party property, immobile objects, reversing into third-party, hitting parked third-party. All these three elements come under low-speed manoeuvring, and I would say that that's an element of lack of concentration, maybe an element of complacency. What's the driver doing at that time in terms of distraction? So I would say, and I'll put it out there, across the board, around about 33% of claims of a typical fleet will be associated with low-speed manoeuvring. And it's how that we then are able to implement measures in line with Driving for Better Business, in line with TTC, so that we can impart advice, guidance to quell the number of quick claims, reduce the severity and the frequency.
Yeah, it's really helpful. I mean, 33% seems to be the number. I mean, when we surveyed a lot of fleet professionals, a third of them felt that they just didn't have the buy-in from the board. So if we move on to chat a bit about that, because I'm conscious of time, I mean, it is quite astonishing that when you sort of think, we talked about all the reasons sort of why and how important it should be for a business, whether that's around your duty of care or just supporting your employees or the financial sort of impacts, that still a large percentage that still don't have that sort of buy-in. And we sort of see that training interventions off the back of monitoring sort of people's risk can actually lead to sort of more 50% reduction in those overall driver scores. And, as an example, we saw one of our customers, Northern Lighthouse Board, saw a 37% reduction in driver incidents once they'd sort of implemented this. So, I mean, one of the key challenges, though, as we all know, is balancing operational efficiency with safety, obviously, and that's a balance that, we all have to play. How do you convince senior leadership, that investing in safety ultimately in the long run is the right thing to do? So, Miranda, should we come to you?
And ultimately, businesses have a legal responsibility, but there's also a moral responsibility. In my role, my focus is purely on safety. So I don't manage and measure cost of incidents and cost of repairs. My sole focus is monitoring and managing the KPIs that are in relation to reduction of incidents, collisions, and injuries ultimately. And to get that buy-in from senior management, yes, I have to produce cost-benefit analysis. We have to look at the cost of implementing telematics, the cost of implementing dash cams, and the strategies that we've implemented have proven that in the last 3 years, we've managed to reduce speeding events per million business miles by 36%. We've also reduced driving events and severe driving events by 51%, and that has ultimately meant that we are having less severe incidents, less overall incidents, and our injuries have reduced by 50% within the 3 years.
Wow.
And then from an insurance point of view, Jeremy, we've been able to reduce our at-fault third-party incidents by 38%. And that's really just through focusing on speed, using the telematics data. And every month we report back to the board. We report back what we've been able to implement, what effect it's had on the dashboards, the KPIs that we're monitoring and measuring. And that positive message is getting back to the board. The other thing that we did with senior management is we actually put them all through an in-vehicle driving assessment. So we've now got 15 ROSPA-trained driving assessors across our business. So they're internal people operating. They are line managers themselves. But the senior management have seen the benefit of it. They see that the training, the in-vehicle training, is what works really, really well. You don't want death by PowerPoint when you're trying to educate drivers. You want to get in the vehicle with them. You want to talk them through the safety aspects, understand their concerns, what situation are they in, and then give them that training and give them that feedback. It's about supporting them. It's not about a blame culture. It's making sure that they're continuing to stay safe.
And Gary, it's taken you 5 years, but you've got there. I mean, give us a few lessons of how you managed to get the board to really buy into, I suppose, what your plan was.
It started off, and I said it earlier on, that I ambushed the presentation, to be honest with you. I give a little PowerPoint presentation to somebody who sat on the board, and it pricked their ears up, for want of a better word. And is what that person then did is he commissioned an internal fleet audit. And on the back of the internal fleet audit, as I said earlier on, it sort of pulled the pin, and from there, past 10 months, we've seen, I mean, just talking about perimeter drives just on their own, last May, June time, we were sitting at about 1,200 perimeter drives which were being revoked or they were pending. We're now sitting at about 400. So that's just a massive improvement, and that's just perimeter drives at the end of the day. When somebody's not got a permit to drive, then there's something wrong somewhere. And that was just all on the back of the audit. And obviously, it's not just about permit to drives, but it's about what we've done with the e-learning, the mini module. So to me, if I've got any advice to take away, it's the audit. It's getting the audit, whether it be an internal audit or whether it be an external audit, because you've got to put the piece of paper under the noses of the right people and make them sit up and go,
yeah,
what's all this about?
And there must be also, I mean, we've talked about safety, we've talked about sort of financial. I mean, there must be some other external benefits as well, through looking at driver behaviour and those kind of things, for example, presumably in relation to maybe your company's net zero ambitions or those kind of things as well. Have you seen some of those?
Not with regard to the net zero, but it all sort of drives into that, doesn't it? At the end of the day, to me, if you change the driver behaviour, everything else follows. Your cost reductions, your insurance premiums, you improve on your emissions and that. Your tyre, your wear and tear, your damage. That all floods into it. It's changing that behaviour across the whole of the group.
And I think there's a lot to be said for driver well-being as well. Yeah. Because we often find that we continually encourage drivers to say you're not under any pressure to get to site at a particular time. We want you to arrive safely. So if you're stuck in traffic, if you're delayed for whatever reason, absolutely fine. Pull over somewhere safe. Advise us that you're due to be late. And then also from a fatigue point of view, we've got a fatigue management system in place. So we work with the data from Webfleet that transacts with our fuel capture system, our mileage capture system. and that sends automatic text messages. So from the moment the driver leaves their home address, that is the start of their working day. So the working clock starts ticking, it includes their drive time, their journeys throughout the day, and then when it reaches 10 hours, the driver gets a text message alert to advise them that they've reached 10 hours, and then we expect a risk assessment to be carried out. So what we're trying to do is work with the technology available to us to improve driver well-being and make sure that drivers are aware of the risks to themselves and obviously to other road users.
Really helpful, thank you. We've covered a lot today, from technology adoption to cultural shifts, financial justification, all those kind of things. Just before we wrap up or we go to any questions, I mean, a last few words. I mean, Jeremy, is there anything that you'd put out there as being something key that we haven't talked about?
For somebody coming into driver risk management or managing drivers themselves and want some advice, well, I would suggest you need to be enrolling to drive a better business. You need to be joining Break, the road safety charity, enrolling Fleet News to understand what others, their advice, their guidance, bounce off others. You can network with people within those organisations. But one other thing is we don't know what we don't know, do we? So I think it's a massive opportunity to share and ask and seek advice.
Brilliant. And Miranda, I mean, someone starting out on their journey of thinking about sort of driver risk management, one bit of advice?
I think my advice would be to create a role specific to driver safety in your organisation, because that then focuses the objectives for that individual specifically on safety. Don't focus on cost necessarily. The cost benefits will come, but if you can focus on the driver safety aspect first, and then also collaborating. You can't do this alone. You need to engage with the drivers, engage with senior management, use the ideas and initiatives and best practice from other organisations, customers, suppliers. And what I do, I pull a team of people together every month across the business, and we talk about ideas and initiatives. We can't develop them all, of course, but it's about setting priorities, and it's constantly moving forward. And for me, it's keeping that conversation going.
And I'm sure there are people out there thinking, we can't afford to do that. Time, resources, they're really stretched. But I mean, I suppose the answer about you can't afford not to do it, because it is so serious. The implications can be so important. It's putting it at the top of that pile, isn't it?
It is. I mean, driving is one of the key working risks, and I think it's totally underestimated. We do adopt a lot of safety practices on site in the offices, but we don't adopt the same level of risk assessments for driving, and that's what needs to change.
And Gary, one bit of advice from you?
I think I'll go back to what I've just said. You've got to get the buy-in. If you get the buy-in, then, like I say, I've been at Kia 5 odd years, and I'm 10 months into a journey, and that's just purely through getting the buy-in. I think the other thing is what you've just said there, Miranda, and I think I'm going to put your number on speed dial, because you've got some good initiatives there that are going on, but that's our journey at the end of the day. That's where we want to be in 4 or 5 years' time. But to me, it's buy-in. Get the buy-in.
No, really helpful, and I think building that case, is a really important aspect. So thank you all. Have we got any questions in the audience? Conscious we are drastically running out of time, but are there any burning questions that anyone wants to ask any of our panellists, or do you just all want to go and get your late lunch?
Some fantastic insight. Thank you very much, all of you. Does anybody have any questions for the panel?
Hi, Chris from Mighty Defence. My job role is road safety advisor for one of the MOD sites we work on. With driver familiarisation, how far do you go with it? Is it per vehicle platform, or be it electric vehicles? How far are you actually going with it?
So the vehicle familiarisation we use is specific to the vehicle in question. So when the driver picks up the vehicle, we literally spend about 40 minutes in the vehicle with them. We walk them around it, we talk about the safety features specific to the vehicle. We actually request that the driver does a quick drive around, making sure that they're aware of the parking sensors. all the safety features, that they know how to use the cruise control, they know how to operate the infotainment system, the dangers of infotainment system whilst driving. We make sure that all of those safety features are pointed out to them. And then we also encourage the same with hire vehicles. So one of the dangers is anybody that gets in a hire vehicle, well, it's a car, I can drive it. No, take a moment to familiarise yourself.
Yeah. Gary, anything from you on that? I mean, in terms of the familiarisation to...
Yeah, I mean, we're not at that level at this moment in time with regard to... If somebody gets a company car, then when they get the company car delivered, then they've got that familiarisation. Within the local sort of businesses themselves, we don't have that consistency across the group, but within various sort of businesses, there will be at some level where they get familiarisation with the driver trainer. I mean, we haven't got a handful of driver trainers. It's only across certain businesses, but that's the way we want to be at, where everybody who joins the company gets that familiarisation.
And I think that's it, isn't it? Everyone's on that journey, and everyone's at different stages of that journey. But I think it's moving forward, and I suppose it's what works for you and your organisation. But actually, are you confident that there is an ongoing improvement? And fundamentally, it comes back to your duty of care for your people, doesn't it? And do you feel confident you're putting that in place if challenged? And we've all got to make difficult choices, and we.
Can I just add something?
Yeah.
In terms of that electric piece, I think we need to understand the user. Is it a new user or an existing? Because you could be condescending in terms of what you're trying to tell that person, but I have to say, from a power talk point of view, that electric vehicle and compared to ICE, there needs to be something there that we utilise from an awareness point of view, with all that familiarisation piece to tell our people, instead of just putting them in that vehicle and off they go. There's the charging element of it as well that needs to be explained. I don't think we can rely on dealerships or lease partners or delivery companies, and what Miranda's doing in terms of that induction is wonderful to hear.
And that's something we've seen through our system. We've created sort of e-learning packages directly for electric vehicles and people familiarising themselves with them.
We have something specific for electric vehicles. So we have an e-learning module that's mandatory for them to complete before they take delivery of that vehicle.
Yeah.
And then also we do an in-vehicle driving assessment, because the instant talk on electric vehicles is so much different. We have seen that some of the electric vehicle drivers, in particular Teslas with benefit drivers, are causing us concern with slow speed manoeuvres. We've got considerable damage costs. So it's about, for us, what we've found is actually the over-reliance on technology in the vehicles. So people are simply not using their eyes and their mirrors. They're over-reliant on cameras and sensors.
Yeah, that's a good point. So
we're
out of time. Can I just, before you go, thank the panelists, for their insights, for coming and spending time. I mean, hopefully, from our point of view, you've got insight into some different organisations, how they manage the risk around their drivers and the importance, and how you might be able to take some of those nuggets away for your own organisations. If you want to talk to any of us, we'll be around for a bit, or our stand at TTC is just over the corner there, so feel free to pop over and talk to some of the team.
Fantastic. Thank you all very much. It was a fascinating session.